For the Hellion that lets it go into this battle mode where he's a lot slower and he's a lot tougher. And what this does is it allows the Hellion to withstand a lot of this late game Zealot Archon attacks that right now they have to kite like crazy to deal with. And maybe more importantly, it really allows them to be an end-game fighter in those scenarios where there's just a lot of splash on the battlefield. If there's a lot of Colossus in play, if there's any number of siege tanks in play, you can bet that your Hellions aren't going to survive that first blast as they close to engage. So the Hellion right now is relegated absolutely to that sort of early to mid-game raider and harasser. And only in very special players can get the ability to make this a really massable unit for end-game battles. So I'm going to show you what this transformation looks like. I think our artist did a pretty good job on it. And now I'm going to show you a little video of these guys in action. Now this video was made just for clarity. This is not how it would look in a real sort of esports encounter, but you'll get the idea. Here you can see the Terran players trying to sort of get away. He's kiting, not real well, but reasonably well against these Zealots. He just can't stand up to this kind of firepower. So we go back up into the base. We're going to get some Hellions in play here. We're cheating a little bit with the choke, but you get the idea. And they'll deploy into their battle form. And now with all this overlapping splash and their additional toughness, these Hellions will be able to withstand this charge and really deal with this kind of Zealot Archon threat. Hellions ordinarily be very unhappy with all the splash damage coming down on their heads from their own siege tanks, let alone from the Archons and the attacks from the Zealots in front of them. But the Battle Hellion, being a lot tougher, can stand up to this kind of firepower and can remain a relevant unit in these kinds of late-game battles. All right, I'll let David talk about the Warhound.
So the Warhound is the new factory unit. It's a mechanical unit. Its main role is the anti-air mass mutalist role like the Thor used to have. And it's a medium-cost, fairly fast-moving mechanical unit. So it's pretty much just a smaller, faster version of the Thor. So it won't suffer from the two Thor problems that we mentioned before. But the main difference of the Warhound compared to the Thor is that it's got an anti-mechanical ground attack, which means if you're fighting against another Terran player who's using mostly factory-based units, this is a very powerful unit to use against that. And also against Protoss, because most of the Protoss ground units are mechanical units. In a straight-up mass situation, I think the only non-mechanical unit Protoss has is the Zealot. So this really allows us to move the Thor up into a different role. And the role that we chose for the Thor was the Limit 1, super high health, high burst damage, really easy to use, attack move friendly unit. So this really allows us to fulfill the fantasy of the Uber unit that the Mothership really couldn't fulfill back in Wings of Liberty. The Mothership had a lot of problems. It was slow moving. It was always the first target to kill because of the cloak ability. And it had a bunch of powerful spells, so if you didn't use those spells, the Mothership was not as powerful as it could be. So we're hoping that this new Thor really caters to that group of players that really want that Uber sort of unit. Yeah. And I'd just like to point out that this unit is definitely under construction, and in our internal playtests, this unit felt pretty strong, especially against Terran and Protoss, and against Mutalisks as well. But we just want to always look for more feedback on this guy. So if you get a chance to go out to the playtest stations and just check it out and give us feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. So in this first video, you'll see the Hellions and Warhounds going up against the more traditional Marine tank army. So the Marines and tanks are spread out pretty well. So the Hellions will go into the new battle mode, which would allow them to withstand the siege tank fire a lot easier, while the Warhounds are picking off the siege tanks using focus fire. They actually have 7 range, so they're pretty good at picking off siege tanks like this. So obviously, if all these siege tanks and Marines were packed up tightly into a choke point, there's no way this Hellion and Warhound army could push that line. But that's exactly what we wanted to go for. We wanted the more traditional Marine and siege tank army to be stronger at tighter chokes with heavily defended chokes, whereas the Hellions and Warhounds have the mobility advantage to fight against that in a different way.
All right, the Shredder. So the Shredder is a new Terran radiation robot. This is kind of a weird unit for us. We're trying some new stuff we've never really tried in the game before with this guy. He's very, very cheap board control. The Terrans have some pretty decent board control with their siege tanks, but it's not very cheap. And if you leave a siege tank off by himself to try to control some part of the map, I'm guessing that's what's going to happen to him pretty quick. And we want something that is not added to the ball of death. This is a term our fans have coined for just a big blob of Marines, Marauders, Medevacs, really almost any group of units in the game. It's got a ton of stuff in it, and you sort of put it in one control group, and you attack move with it, and you kind of hope. And it's very difficult. Yeah, I've done that many times. So it's very difficult to really know how to control that, and it's kind of a pain for the enemy to figure out how to counter it because he's looking at this big ball of stuff coming at him. So we don't want to add any more to that. And this guy is fundamentally not allowed to be added to the ball of death, and I'll show you why. So these guys can move out, and they can take a little bit of time to set up, and they can create a powerful radiation death field, which gives the Terrans some ferocious board control. That's too bad. Sorry, Nesty. All right. But he has a fundamental weakness. He can't keep his radiation field on near other units that aren't shredders. If other units move into the radius, he'll shut it off so it doesn't hurt them. So in this case, these Marines stim and rush forward, you see the field just shut off. No shredder fire at all. Now, when the Marines get out of the radius, the shredder turns back on. Now, in this case, the shredders got lucky. In reality, most of the time, these shredders get wiped out in these types of scenarios. You need to keep this unit away from the rest of your army, or it is absolutely useless. And so it's very important to manage this guy carefully. So we're hoping this is a way for the Terrans to get that kind of cheaper board control you would see in things like spider mines, but see it in a way that's kind of unique and really forces the Terrans to spread out their army and not clump up on top of these things. So this is where we're at today with the Terrans. We've got the new Battle Hellion, we've got the new Warhound, and we've got this crazy new unit called the Shredder. We're hoping this creates a lot more diversity in play between the Terrans and their opponents, and at the same time gives the Terrans a few more strategic options, hopefully not giving the Terrans too many more options. I know a lot of players feel like they have too many already. But anything we can do to give them a little something without fundamentally destabilizing the game.